Newcastle just outclassed Barcelona, and I know they didn't get the result, so that might sound completely mad, but I really think they deserved to win this game. If it wasn't for a moment of madness at the end and just terrible final action decision making throughout the game, I really think Newcastle deserved to win this 2, maybe in 3-0. I just thought they were fantastic. And I think it's really interesting as to how they did this, because the setups formationally were very, very similar to both teams. However, the execution, the principles of play were very different. And I'm going to show you what I mean in this video, because this was the setup for Barcelona when building out the back in possession, and the Newcastle shape when they were building out was exactly the same. But what we saw from Barcelona, obviously you've got this, the 3, the 4, and then kind of the 4 again up front, including the goalkeeper in that original 3, and then Newcastle going man to man across the pitch, apart from on the goalkeeper, pressing quite aggressively. And Barcelona have the technical quality to be able to play through this press, right? And we saw that all throughout the game. They played their little tiki-taka, and they build up the pitch really slowly. But I think this was their downfall, because then they just pushed Newcastle back into their block, which was 4-5-1, a very similar block to what we saw Newcastle do against Manchester City just at the weekend, which wasn't very successful. And the key changes that we'll get onto later as to why that was, but they'd push Newcastle back into their block. They'd set up 3-2-5, like we know every team does, but then they couldn't really do anything from these positions because Newcastle were fantastic at being active in the press, in the block, if that makes sense. I'll show you what I mean with the in-game footage now. So here you can see from the 5th minute Barcelona's shape in the build-up. We have that 3 with the goalkeeper, like we talked about on the tactics board, and then we have this 4, and Newcastle, like you can see, a man-to-man absolutely everywhere, basically. You've got man-to-man, 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 and man-to-man over here as well. It's a very similar setup to what we saw against Manchester City in the press, and Barcelona have the quality to play through this, and they did quite frequently. Here's a really nice example of Barcelona's build-up from this game, quite a rare example actually, because they actually move really vertically and really quickly. Starts off with the goalkeeper. He just knocks an easy pass into Kubarsi, who's fantastic on the ball, a fantastic player, and then he has time here. He's actually rushed quite quick, right, by the Newcastle player. You think he hasn't got an option on, but it's lovely movement from Yamin Yamal. It's a great line-breaking pass from Kubarsi to go direct into Yamin, who's dropped in, and then you have this really nice double movement, simple movement. Yamal drops. I think that's... anyway, whatever he's called, he pushes forwards into this space, and just like that, you're through the press really nicely. And it didn't come to anything in the end, but it's really lovely build-up from Barcelona. It's actually a rare moment in this game, because it was, I think, their only good build-up where they moved through with short passes, they moved vertically, they moved quickly, and got in behind Newcastle. Most of the time, it was really slow. They didn't really break lines. They just pushed Newcastle back into their block slowly, which is what we're going to talk about now, because I thought Newcastle's block was fantastic in this game. I think it's what should have won them the game, and it's what limited Barcelona to basically nothing in this match. But to understand why the block was so good, I think we have to go and look back to how they set up defensively against Manchester City at the weekend and what went wrong there, and how they've changed the block to accommodate and fix those mistakes. Because if we look at the first goal here, just look how deep Newcastle are. They're right on the edge of their box. City of absolute territory. It's domination, right? It's really difficult to play out. And when you are this deep, what it means is that the opposition can access their wingers really, really easily. And that's exactly what Man City do here. It's a good ball from Tijani Reinders out to Jeremy Doku. And when you've got players like Doku, players like Savinho, I'm going to put Yamin Yamal in with those guys. It sounds crazy. But when you've got these really dangerous dribblers and you're letting them have the ball frequently, get 1v1 with your fullback, it's a long day for you defensively, because these guys are so good. They're always going to create something. That's exactly what we see from Doku here. He gets to the byline, cuts it back, and it's 1-0 Manchester City, because you've sat in so deep in your block. You've not been proactive in it. And the other big mistake I think they made is, again here, just not being proactive in the block. They're not closing down the ball carrier. Nico Gonzalez has so much time on the ball here to be able to pick this pass through. I think Nick Voltemada not starting this game as well was massive for Newcastle, because we identified in the second half of the weekend that he was a weakness in this Newcastle block. He's never checking his shoulder, seeing where Nunes is, and we played through him consistently in that second half, finding Núñez. But there's no pressure on Nico Gonzalez here. It gives him the time to be able to play this pass. And once you've infiltrated the block, once you've found this space in the pocket, it's a really difficult defensive position for Newcastle. Núñez can play out wide to Savinho, who then finds Núñez attacking that half space. Núñez gets the ball back in the half space, cut back goal. Because you're again so deep, you're not putting pressure on the ball carrier, you're not being proactive and against the best teams, they'll punish you for that. And the third goal is the exact same thing from a Newcastle perspective. They haven't put pressure on, I think that's it's not John Stones. Again, Nico Gonzalez not putting pressure on the ball carrier, especially when there's such a good passer of the ball like Nico Gonzalez is. You can't afford to do that. Nick Voltemada's way too slow in closing him down here. That gives him the space and the time to be able to pick this pass through to Núñez in the pocket. And very similarly, when they get the ball in the pocket, you're finished basically. Núñez can drive, and he does drive, plays the ball into Marmoush, and it's a great finish from Marmoush, but the chance comes from not closing down that player initially, right? And that's something we saw Barcelona absolutely fix today. Initially here you can see they're in this 4-5-1 setup. You've got the 4, you've got the 5, and you've got the 1 here by himself. But the difference is, look how they're pushing up. They're always looking to press Barcelona higher at the pitch. They're not sat reactively at the edge of the box. They're trying to push up, be proactive. That's the key difference here from the weekend. And we see here again, you get Cubarsí on the ball. We talked about earlier, we saw an example of how dangerous he can be when he gets the ball. And Newcastle know this. So what does Joelinton do? He's stepping up, closing him down quickly before he has time to find a pass through to someone in the block. It's fantastic from Joelinton, and Newcastle did this consistently, whether it was Tonali, Joelinton, Ramsey, Barnes, whoever it was, stepping up, putting pressure on the ball carrier, because Barcelona have wonderful players who can find those passes. Again here, we see Newcastle sat in the 4-5-1 shape, just being reactive. Again, they're not too deep, so this ball out wide isn't really on to Rafinha. That's a difficult pass, right? Same with on the other side, it's difficult to find Yamal and get them in these 1v1 situations, which we basically never saw in this game. And then as soon as the ball comes into Pedri, Tonali's proactive, he's closing him down so he can't get his head up and find the passes that he wants to find, right? He can't play into Fer Lopez, he can't play into Lewandowski, he can't play into this guy here. It's just not on for him because Newcastle's so proactive in closing them down, and in my opinion, that's what allowed them to be the better side in this game. I want to talk a bit now about what Newcastle were doing in possession, because I'm not sure it was fantastic from Newcastle. I think it was more a tactical blunder from Hansi Flick and how he changed in the game and didn't maybe adapt fully, because what we saw in the first half was that Newcastle are running the same build-up pattern that Barcelona were. It's the 3, it's then this 4, and then you have the 3 or the 4 on the final line as well, very similar to Barcelona. But the principle and the style of how they executed it was very different, because Newcastle are a physical team, so they were very, very happy to go long, which is relevant later. Barcelona were playing in this narrow diamond structure to try and go man-to-man centrally, and then if the ball would go out wide here, you'd see Lamine Yamal make this trek, and Araujo would jump up quite aggressively, the back line would shift across, and you'd get this, right? And then maybe Lewis Hall has to play back. But the issue with this is that Newcastle are happy to go long, so then they'd just overload this back line, they'd push midfielders up, and they'd have Lewis Hall play direct this long ball, and they'd try and win the second balls. And because Barcelona aren't a super physical team, they'd lose these a lot of the time. They were really scared of this long ball. So what we see Hansi Flick do in the second half is just be way more passive. Instead of jumping Araujo up and risking losing maybe an overload centrally, Araujo, as a big physical player, would stay back. Same thing with Cancelo. These guys wouldn't be jumping and pressing the ball, but you still have this super narrow press centrally, right? So it was really, really easy for Newcastle in these situations to be able to access Lewis Hall and Trippier on the other side, just play this pass. And when they do play this pass and get the ball to them, which they did very, very frequently, they can just drive forwards. There's not really anyone stopping them doing that. And we saw Lewis Hall do this loads. He'd carry the ball, and then Barcelona in a really, really bad situation, because then you've got all these Newcastle runners running into the space in behind the Barcelona high line, and all Lewis Hall has to do is have all the time in the world to pick a good pass into the space. And this is basically where every Newcastle chance came from. I want to go through some in-game examples of this now and just show you how many chances Newcastle generated from doing this, because the game really could have easily have been 2, 3-0, maybe even 4-0. I think Newcastle were miles the better team in this, and I loved this still from the start, just in terms of showing intent, because Newcastle are in the same build-up shape Barcelona are in. It's the 3 at the back, and then you have this 4 in midfield, and everyone else on the line. But just look at Tonali here, because he's great in showing the intent of what Newcastle want to do. He's not even thinking about coming and getting the ball from Chow. Instead, he's making this forwards run to go and get on the back line to then compete for the second ball, compete for the long ball. And I just think that's so different from what Barcelona were doing, despite having the same shape, which is really interesting. And Newcastle do go long here, and then they ping pong win the second ball here. And just like that, they've played through Barca's press or played over Barca's press and gained so much territory. And they did this consistently throughout the game because the threat was there. That's why Barcelona had the fullbacks pinned back. And this is a really nice passage of play here as well. It's actually one of the few times Newcastle played through Barcelona's press, but you can see what we're talking about here with the fullback. Ramsdale goes short to Chow, and then Chow just can just play it into Trippier. That access is really easy because this Barcelona press here in the middle, they're too narrow, right? They can't possibly cover the wide area and the central spaces too, and that just allowed really easy fullback access for Newcastle. And eventually the jump up does come from Barcelona here, but it's way too late. Trippier's already turned and played the pass, and it's nearly arrived by the time he gets there. The jump's basically pointless. The press is too late, like I say. Alanga lets it run really cleverly into Sula, and then he gets it back. And because the fullbacks jumped, there's this big space here in behind. Sula plays in Alanga, who then uses his pace down the wing. And this is what I'm talking about in terms of not having that killer intent, not having that final action successful for Newcastle and being really wasteful throughout the game, because this ball has to go here, right? It has to go on the next touch. The opportunity is there to play Harvey Barnes through, but he holds onto it, holds onto it, holds onto it, and then plays it too late. And then João Garcia can just gather it, and you don't even get a shooting opportunity when really you should have had a really, really high XG chance from that situation. And Newcastle did this consistently throughout the game. This is another moment where they find Lewis Hall really easily. The press is narrow, but there's big spaces because so many Barca players are pinned back, which allows Chow to just drive with the ball, and he does excellently here. Drives through the Barcelona press because their spaces are so big, takes 3 players out of the game, and then Lamine Yamal switched off. He can find that pass into Lewis Hall easily, who can then play this ball, he can play that ball, he can play that ball. It's a really, really dangerous position that Barcelona are continually letting Newcastle into. Here's another example. Tino Livramento again getting the ball in this position that we've talked about so much so far, and he's got runners, so many runners. In fact, Joe Linton pushing up onto the last line, even Harvey Barnes on the far side, like 4v4 here. It's a really dangerous situation, and he plays Anthony Gordon in. Gordon gets the ball here. What can he do with it? He finds a great pass across to Harvey Barnes, who shoots, comes off the post, and then Joe Linton scores. However, he is offside. This is another example of Newcastle generating a chance, but it originates from the fullback. Again here, this time Lewis Hall getting the ball in the same bit of space that we've talked about. And again, there's so many Newcastle runners. Can he find one? Yes, he can. And it's about being clinical again here, right? This ball has to come across. It just has to. If it goes across, you have an open goal. That is certainly 1-0. But Harvey Barnes doesn't cross it, and instead his shot is blocked and it comes to nothing. So we've seen 2 examples already here of Newcastle having fantastic opportunities that didn't even result in a shot in the end. It's insane. And this is actually the goal. It doesn't come from what we've talked about. It comes from Newcastle actually kind of pinning Barcelona back a bit. The only time this really happened for either team in the game. They find Jacob Murphy out wide. He plays a lovely 1-2 here. Can he get the ball back? Yes, he can. And he puts in a really good cross for Harvey Barnes. But I want to dig out Araujo here because I think it's terrible defending. Just look at him here. Not here. Look at him here. Barcelona are right there, man to man here, man to man, man to man, man to man. You've got to stick with your man. You just have to. A cross is coming in the box, right? It's really basic defending. And we see the other Barcelona players do stick to their man. Araujo switches off for a split second, and that allows Harvey Barnes to get the separation on him that he needs to have a tap in, basically. There's no pressure on it at all, and that just can't happen in any level of football, never mind in the Champions League. It's really, really poor. And like I say, I think Newcastle were really unlucky here, and that concludes this video. I think they really could have gone and won this game 2-0, 3-0, and if they take that into the second leg, I think they have a real chance. Now, not so much. I think they're a bit done for. A lapse of concentration at the end, 1-1, advantage Barcelona, and you would back Barcelona to go and win this game. But let me know if you guys enjoyed this analysis. If you want to see more of this type of stuff, I'll try and do some more games in the future. Let me know what you thought of the game down in the comments as well, and I'll see you tonight for the Real Madrid Man City game.